Blood pooled on the tile floor beneath the baby's high chair. The mother stood frozen, hands trembling, a knife clattering to the ground. Behind her the father screamed, not from fear, but rage. And upstairs the 10-year-old girl simply watched through the banister rails, smiling. It wasn't until years later, after the trial, after the institutions, after everything had crumbled, that someone finally asked the right question. Do you remember what really happened that night? The whispering started when Rachel was 8. At first it was just her name, spoken softly in the dark, like a breeze brushing against her ear. She would sit up in bed, wide-eyed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, and stare into the shadows. Her mother chalked it up to nightmares. Her father told her to be brave, to stop letting her imagination run wild. But it didn't feel like imagination. It felt real. Too real. By 10, the whispers had grown into full sentences, murmured just out of reach. They only came at night. Always. When she was alone, Rachel began sleeping with the door open, a nightlight glowing beside her bed. She memorized her father's footsteps in the hall, the rhythm of her mother's coughs in the next room, sounds that anchored her to reality, to safety, until the night of the kitchen incident. It happened on a quiet Sunday. Rachel had been coloring in the living room while her baby brother Tyler sat in his high chair gnawing on a piece of toast. Their mother was slicing vegetables for dinner. Everything was normal, ordinary. Then the lights flickered. Rachel remembered the humming, low and thick, like the sound underwater. She remembered the sudden silence, the way her mother's hands stopped moving, knife hovering midair. Rachel had stood up, drawn like a moth toward something she couldn't explain. When she reached the kitchen, blood was already dripping from the counter. Her baby brother was screaming. Her mother stood over him, blank-eyed, face expressionless, the kitchen knife slick with red. Rachel didn't scream. She couldn't. She just stared. Then her father burst in, tackled her mother to the floor, screamed her name. "Melissa, what did you do?" And the room erupted into chaos. Rachel didn't speak a word that night, not when the police came, not when the ambulance took her baby brother away, not even when the doctors asked her to. She simply watched and listened. The whispers now were everywhere. Years passed. Rachel was placed with her aunt in a town 2 states away. Her mother was committed to a psychiatric hospital, diagnosed with postpartum psychosis and delusional disorder. Her father, well, he disappeared. A quiet resignation. No trace left. Some said he moved to California. Others said he'd started drinking again. But the truth was, no one asked questions anymore. Except Rachel. Because the whispers never stopped. Now 17, she sat in the attic bedroom of her aunt's house, surrounded by journals filled with scribbles, drawings, and half-remembered fragments of her childhood. The doctors called it hallucinations, tied to trauma, possibly a form of auditory pseudo-hallucination common in dissociative disorders. But Rachel didn't believe them, because the whispers weren't just sounds anymore. They were instructions, and last night, for the first time, they'd said something different. It's time to remember. The attic smelled like dust and old wood, like forgotten things buried under layers of time. Rachel sat cross-legged beneath the low ceiling, a single bulb swinging above her. Her journal lay open on her lap, filled with the same words written over and over in jagged ink. It's time to remember. She hadn't told her aunt about the whispers, not once in all the years she'd lived there. Her therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Henley, had said secrecy was a coping mechanism. But this wasn't about coping. It was about surviving. Rachel flipped back through the journal pages. Somewhere in between the doodles and frantic thoughts, she found a crude drawing she'd made months ago. A high chair, a red pool beneath it, and 2 dark figures, her parents, on either side. Her 10-year-old self was drawn in the background, smiling with sharp, uneven teeth. She didn't remember drawing it. She didn't remember smiling that night either. Downstairs, her aunt was watching television. Some game show, laughter echoing faintly through the floorboards. Rachel got up, crossed the attic to an old dresser by the wall. It had once belonged to her father, shipped to her aunt after his disappearance. She'd never opened the bottom drawer. It had been jammed shut since it arrived. But tonight, the whispers led her to it. Look inside. Her fingers wrapped around the metal handle. She pulled. Nothing. She braced her foot against the wood and yanked harder. With a crack of aged glue and wood splinters, the drawer groaned open. Inside was a small wooden box. She recognized it immediately. Her father's memory box. He used to keep things in it, ticket stubs, coins, an old dog tag from his military days. But when she opened it now, the contents made her freeze. Photos of her mother, dozens of them, all candid, taken from behind or through windows. Some were blurry, some clearly taken from a distance. In every single one, her mother looked scared, startled, unaware she was being watched. There was one more item in the box, a cassette tape, labeled simply M. April 7th. Rachel's hands trembled as she picked it up. That was the date of the kitchen incident, the night her baby brother was nearly killed. She didn't have a cassette player, but her aunt did, buried in a cabinet downstairs, part of an old stereo system she refused to throw away. Rachel crept down the stairs, silent. Her aunt was still, watching TV, half asleep, wine glass in hand. Rachel slipped into the den, found the stereo and fed the tape into the player, a click, then static, then breathing, heavy, male, labored, then a voice. Her father's voice. She's starting to forget again. Says she didn't do anything. I watched her hold the knife and smile. She smiled. God damn it. I know what I saw. I just don't know if she's faking it, or if something else is happening to her. Another pause. I heard her talking to herself last night, not whispering, arguing, and not in her voice. I swear to God, it was someone else. Someone older, colder. She said she was going to make me watch. I don't know what to do. Rachel's mouth went dry. The whispers were rising now, louder in her ears, almost frantic. You're looking the wrong way, Rachel. She wasn't the only one in that kitchen. The voice on the tape cut off suddenly, replaced by a thick rumbling static that seemed to vibrate the floor beneath Rachel's feet. She yanked the cassette out of the stereo like it had burned her. She stood there, the dim light from the hallway casting long shadows through the den, pulse hammering in her throat. Her father had recorded her mother. He had followed her. He had watched her, hidden, and he believed she wasn't acting alone, that some part of her, some voice, wasn't her at all. Rachel backed away from the stereo, clutching the tape in her hand. Upstairs, the whispers had gone silent, but in their place came something worse. Footsteps, not from the stairs, not from the hallway, from the walls. She froze. There it was again, a soft rhythmic thump-thump against the plaster behind the bookshelf. Then a dragging noise. Then nothing. She wanted to scream, but her body locked up, like it always did when the memories came too fast. She'd learned not to fight it, just ride it out like a wave breaking inside her skull. That's when the vision hit. Not a dream, not a memory. Something in between. She was 10 years old again, standing in the kitchen doorway. The lights were flickering. Her mother stood with the knife, face pale, lips moving. But this time, Rachel heard what she said. I'm sorry, I can't stop her. She's stronger now. Then her mother looked directly at her. You shouldn't be watching this. Rachel snapped back to the present, collapsing to her knees. Her aunt's voice echoed from the living room. You okay, honey? I'm fine, she choked out, even though she wasn't. She went back upstairs, tape still in hand, and shut the attic door behind her. She needed answers, and there was only one place left to look. Her father's old journals. She'd always thought they were blank, just dusty notebooks shoved into a milk crate in the corner. But when she opened the first one, the ink shimmered faintly under the light. The writing was faint, almost erased, but she could still make out parts of it. Melissa's dissociation is getting worse. She doesn't recognize me in the mornings. Says I'm someone named Grant. Keeps saying I'm watching her. I am watching her, but not for the reasons she thinks. Next page. Rachel sleepwalks again, caught her whispering in the mirror. Asked who she was talking to. She said, the lady in the corner. There was no one there. I don't know what's happening to this family. I don't know what she is. She froze. Rachel sleepwalks again. Again? She'd never been told she'd sleepwalked before. Never remembered any of it. No one had ever mentioned it. Not her aunt, not the therapists, not even her parents before the incident. Unless they had, and she'd forgotten or repressed it. Her head throbbed, her vision blurred. She flipped to the back of the journal, blank pages except for a scrawled sentence across the last one. If you're reading this, Rachel, I'm sorry. But you need to understand, sometimes the voices aren't theirs. They're yours. She slammed the journal shut. Behind her, something knocked from inside the attic wall. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. She turned. The whispers returned, louder than ever, as if her ears were filled with wind. And then, clear as day, you remember more than you think. Rachel didn't sleep that night. She lay under the quilt, eyes fixed on the attic door, waiting for another knock. But none came. The whispers ebbed into silence around 3 a.m., leaving behind an oppressive stillness that felt like something holding its breath. By morning, her head ached like a hangover. Her aunt had already left for her job at the pharmacy, leaving a note and a $20 bill on the kitchen counter. Rachel didn't eat. She didn't shower. She went straight to the bathroom mirror. She stared at her reflection. Her face looked older today. Not from age, but from something beneath the skin. Tension pulling at the corners of her eyes, a tightness in her jaw. She leaned closer. The air grew cold. "Who are you talking to?" the mirror whispered. She flinched backward so hard she hit the towel rack. The voice hadn't come from behind her. It had come from her own mouth, but not in her voice. She gripped the counter. Her breath came in sharp bursts. Hallucination, she told herself. Flashback, trauma response. But the face in the mirror didn't match her panic. It was calm, watching her, smiling. She grabbed the frame and shook it. The reflection flickered, just for a moment. A flicker like an old TV signal going out of sync. And behind her image, she swore she saw another figure. Just a shadow. Shoulders, hair, the curve of a woman's face, standing behind her. When she spun around, the room was empty, but her journal on the bathroom floor was open to a page she hadn't written on in weeks. A new sentence was there, scrawled in the margins. Ask about the room in the basement, the one they locked after the trial. Her aunt's house didn't have a basement. At least, that's what she'd always been told. She called in sick to school, then began searching the house. Every closet, every cabinet. Behind the pantry shelves, she found it. Faint lines on the floor where the wood had been patched. A trap door, nailed shut and covered in old linoleum. She pried it open with a screwdriver and a hammer. A gust of musty air rose like a breath held for decades. Rachel descended into darkness. The stairs creaked under her weight. The only light came from her phone's flashlight, casting long shadows against concrete walls. Dust motes floated like ghosts in the beam. The basement was small, just a single room, empty except for a rusted metal chair and a child-sized mattress on the floor, and a mirror. It leaned against the far wall, taller than her, ringed with hairline. Cracks. Not broken. Fractured. Rachel stepped toward it. Her reflection didn't move in sync. She raised her hand. Her reflection tilted its head. She stepped back. Then the whispers returned. So loud, they drowned out her thoughts. You lived. Here once. They brought you here when you forgot. This is where the truth began. A flood of images surged in her mind, straps on her wrists, her father's voice begging her to come back, her mother sobbing in the corner, holding a picture of a baby. A baby. Rachel staggered back, breath catching in her throat. It wasn't Tyler. It was a different baby, a girl, wrapped in a pink blanket, crying, a memory, or a dream. But something inside her whispered, no, it happened. She ran back up the stairs, slammed the trapdoor shut, and collapsed on the kitchen floor, heaving. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Do you remember the girl in the mirror yet? Because she remembers you." Rachel stared at the text until the screen dimmed in her hand. Her body was buzzing, fight or flight screaming through her nerves, but she didn't move. Couldn't. Her mind felt split, like a mirror dropped on concrete, every shard showing a different version of her. The one her aunt raised, the one who heard whispers, the one in the mirror, and now this other one. The one connected to a baby that no one ever spoke about. She called Dr. Henley. It was her third therapist in 5 years. Kind, steady, and endlessly patient. But Rachel had never told her the full truth. Not about the whispers. Not about the locked drawer. Not about the mirror. Not until now. She blurted everything. The tape, the photos, the basement, the other child. Silence on the line. Then Dr. Henley's voice, soft but brittle. "Rachel, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Do you ever lose time? Like hours, days, that you can't account for?" Rachel felt a cold drop of sweat run down her spine. "Sometimes. I thought I'd just disassociate." "Have you ever woken up somewhere you don't remember going? Or found things you wrote but didn't recall writing?" Rachel's breath hitched. "Yes." Dr. Henley sighed. "Rachel, I think you need to come in. Today. This may be more than disassociation. I believe you might be experiencing symptoms of dissociative identity disorder." The words hit like a sledgehammer. "No," Rachel whispered. That's not me." But even as she said it, she felt something shift inside. A deep, slow stir, like something old waking up. "I'll come in," she said, and hung up. She never made it to the office. Because when she stepped out her front door, there was a woman waiting for her, tall, with dark red hair pulled into a tight braid, black coat, pale skin. Rachel froze. The woman smiled, cold, clinical. "Hello, Rachel," she said. "My name is Dr. Kessler. I was your first therapist. Back when you were 8, I worked with your mother, before the incident." Rachel blinked. "I don't remember you." "I know. That's part of the problem." She handed Rachel a small envelope. Inside, a photograph, a blurry image of a child, around 6. Face partially turned. Rachel, but the eyes were different, blacked out with ink, or maybe burned. "I need to talk to you," Dr. Kessler said, privately. "Not with your current therapist, not with your aunt, just you and me." Rachel stepped back. "Why?" "Because you were there that night, Rachel. All of you were. And one of you tried to kill that baby." Rachel's knees gave out. She fell onto the porch, gasping, the picture clutched in her hand. Dr. Kessler knelt beside her. "I believe the girl in the mirror is a fragment, an altar, and she's protecting a memory, a very important one." Rachel looked up, eyes wide with horror. "You mean, she's me?" Dr. Kessler nodded. "She's what your mind created to survive. But she's also the one who knows the truth." Rachel could feel the shift happening again, that deep, cold tug pulling her under. The whispering rose to a deafening pitch, and then nothing. Just darkness. When Rachel opened her eyes again, she was standing in the basement, mirror in front of her, and her reflection smiling back. The basement was darker than before. No light from above, no phone in her pocket, no sense of time, just the mirror. Rachel stared at her reflection, or what she thought was her reflection. But it wasn't mimicking her anymore. It stood straighter, tilted its head at the wrong moments, and the eyes, too calm. "Where am I?" Rachel whispered. The other Rachel, the one in the mirror, smiled. "You're inside." Finally, Rachel backed, away, stumbling over the cracked concrete. Her breath came fast, shallow, a scream building behind her teeth. No, this isn't real. "It's more real than what you remember," the mirror Rachel said. "That's the problem." A cold dread settled into her spine, thick and electric. The memories were starting to push through. Half-formed flashes like broken film reels, a locked door, a crying baby, the sharp smell of bleach and blood. Rachel clutched her head. "I didn't do anything. I was just a kid. I didn't—" The voice cut through her. "You were all just kids. Every one of us." And suddenly, she saw them. Reflected in the mirror behind her own image, shadows began to form. A little girl with braids, rocking back and forth. A teenage version of herself, eyes blank, arms crossed. A woman in her 20s with bruises on her. Wrists staring into the void, fragments, altars, parts of Rachel she'd never wanted to acknowledge. Her knees gave out again, hands scraping concrete. The other Rachel, the mirror Rachel, stepped forward from the glass, not through it, but out of her, like a memory finally taking shape. "Do you want to know the truth?" she asked. "About what happened that night? About why?" Rachel couldn't speak. She just nodded. The images came in a flood. April 7th. Her mother had been pacing, distraught, muttering about shadows and voices. The baby, Tyler, was screaming, inconsolable. Her father had left for groceries. Rachel had been sitting, under the table, drawing, humming, but she hadn't been alone in her mind. One of them, the one with the teeth, had surfaced. She wasn't angry. She wasn't vengeful. She was curious. What would happen if the baby stopped crying? Rachel had watched her hand pick up the knife, heard her mother scream, not out of guilt, but because she recognized that look. The same look she'd seen in the mirror once, long ago. The baby wasn't harmed. Her mother had intervened just in time. But the blood was real. The intent was real. And so was the aftermath. Rachel remembered now. She hadn't just witnessed the kitchen incident. She had caused it, or rather, a part of her had. The real reason her mother snapped wasn't psychosis. It was fear. Fear of her own child. Rachel fell, forward, sobbing. Deep, ragged cries from some ancient part of her that had never been allowed to speak. The mirror. Rachel knelt beside her. "You're not evil," she said. "You were fragmented, splintered by trauma, by silence. But now it's time to come together, because the truth won't destroy you, denying it will." And with that, she placed her hand on Rachel's chest. There was pain. Searing, splitting, a thousand thoughts crashing into one. Then, light. Rachel opened her eyes. She was in Dr. Henley's office, wrapped in a blanket. Hooked to an IV, her aunt sobbing in the corner. Dr. Kessler standing by the window, arms crossed, grim. "Where?" Rachel croaked. "You collapsed," Henley said gently. "Outside your house. We brought you here. You've been unconscious. For almost a day." Rachel sat up slowly. "I remember," she whispered. Henley and Kessler exchanged a glance. Rachel looked down at her hands. They were steady, for the first time in years. Quiet. Inside her mind, the whispers had gone silent. But, in the silence, one final voice remained. "There's one more thing you need to see." 3 weeks later, Rachel stood at the edge of the forest behind her childhood home. Dr. Henley and Dr. Kessler had coordinated a treatment plan, something called structured integration therapy. Words like repressed trauma, core identity, and protective fragmentation had become part of her daily vocabulary. She journaled. She painted. She slept, really slept, for the first time in years. But the voice hadn't lied. There was one more thing she needed to see. Rachel's memories had returned in pieces, not all at once. Snippets of her mother crying on the phone with a social worker. Her father arguing with someone in the middle of the night. A locked room that wasn't in the house but outside it, deep in the woods. Her legs moved on instinct, guided by something older than logic. And then she saw it. A rusted metal door, half swallowed by vines, buried into the side of a hill. She pulled it open. Inside, stairs. The air was thick and cold, tinged with mold and old secrets. She descended into the earth. The room at the bottom was small. Concrete floor. flickering. Light bulb, an old crib, a worn teddy bear. A table stacked with VHS tapes, each labeled in her father's tight, careful handwriting. Session 1, June 4th. Session 2, June 18th. Session 3, July 2nd. RD, July 16th. Rachel's fingers trembled as she inserted the last tape into the dusty player. The screen crackled to life. Her father's face filled the frame. Pale, eyes bloodshot, lips pressed tight. If you're watching this, then I assume you've remembered. Or worse, someone else has. Either way, this is the last thing I'll say. He looked over his shoulder, as if making sure the door was locked. Your mother wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid, but we did fail you. We didn't protect you from what happened before you came to us. Rachel's pulse stopped cold. You were adopted, Rachel. At 4. You don't remember. We were told the family history was clean, the records sealed. But after what started happening, after the blackouts, the drawings, the voices, I dug deeper. The screen shook slightly as he adjusted the camera. Your biological mother had dissociative identity disorder, severe, institutionalized after she drowned her infant son. You had an older brother. You were found hiding in a crawl space, catatonic. They said you didn't speak for nearly 6 months. Rachel's hands flew to her mouth. Tears ran down her face in silence. We thought love would be enough. It wasn't. The altar, the one we called the girl in the mirror, she's a protector. But she also remembers everything. And when the new baby came, it triggered her. He looked directly into the lens now. No fear, just sorrow. You didn't hurt your brother, but she almost did, and I couldn't live knowing what might happen if she came back. The screen went black. Rachel sat in that room for a long time, the silence pressing against her like a second skin. It was all real. The fragments, the voices, the violence, the fear, and now, finally, the truth. She emerged from the earth like a ghost returning to her body. The air smelled like spring. She pulled out her phone and texted Dr. Henley one word. Ready? That night, Rachel stood in front of her bathroom mirror, face illuminated by soft light. No voices, no flickers, just her, whole, silent, watching herself and smiling.